He wants to jump
1,000 cars.
Sir, you have 1,000 cars.
I don't think I'd attempt to try this stunt.
Or we owe this horsepower to Uncle Sam.
Too many cars.
car. Roses would be...
Like I put my beer belly on it.
If you can't immediately tell somebody how many cars you have.
You'll really give those uppity yuppies something to think about.
Stay on the bar. Don't go off the bar with your Bronco.
1980 Volvo horns, what's right?
I want to have a man's coolant.
And he's like, oh, I thought it'd be small. It's for a small car. And I'm like, yeah, but it's still an automatic transmission. They're never going to be light.
It's definitely going to have to crash.
Starting off with Brad buying another car.
That's the West. Internet.
You know, is this a Nigerian oil print?
I also wish you drove a Tan Camry.
Anyways,
Anyway,
that's a
horrible,
very
horrible podcast content.
Very
Talking about a picture.
inside joke. Welcome to Auto Off Topic. Happy Thanksgiving, Brad.
It is Thanksgiving week, isn't it, Andrew?
It is. Which also means it's like our 6th anniversary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. A short week
years.
for making podcasts.
6 years. That's so that means we started this in 2016.
That's right.
It's amazing how different my life is now than when we started this podcast.
It is.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like some things from 2016 seem like they were 30 years ago, and some things from 2016 seem like they happened yesterday.
I mean, you still have broken cars, so not too much has changed.
I had significantly more broken cars. I had less cars, but more broken cars. I think is the way that works. But it is. We'll put it this way: you got married in 2017.
I did.
Right. So that was 5 years ago.
That also doesn't seem that long ago.
Right. I, at that time, probably owned 12 cars.
Yep.
The day you got married.
Right.
And if you remember, I had to borrow your Montero to get to your wedding.
This is true. The 89 Montero. Because I had both at the same time.
Nope, I didn't have the 89. I had a later one.
I let you use it after because we drove it over there to get people from my house.
Okay. Well, I remember driving the 99 at that point.
Yeah. Well, but like that week, I was letting you use the 89 to get around.
Yeah, possibly. But anyway, the point of the matter is I owned 12 broken cars.
Yeah.
So I think I think the Camaro it didn't actually. The oil sending unit had a leak in the hose. So yeah, everything was broken. And my brain was in the same state as all of those cars at that time in my life. So it's the fact that we even continue to do podcasts through that time period is pretty crazy. So yeah, six years. 6 years of some successful, some failed projects, and some self-improvement. But the good news is that means that any car that I have bought since we started this podcast that is currently not running has not been around for a decade yet.
Whoa.
That's my new high bar. No, anyway, at that time in my life, I had 12 cars or 11 cars. I don't know, there were a lot of cars, and none of them ran. At this point in my life, there are currently 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cars at this house here that are registered, running, and driving.
All right,
and
that's good.
One of 7, yeah. So that's significantly better.
I find, so at least you work at a car-related place, but I don't anymore. So I have a hard conversation because we do have a car like Slack channel that every once in a while people are like, I saw in that Slack channel, you have like, how many cars do you have? I'm like, 5? They're like, what? Where do you keep them? I'm like, at my house.
Yeah. I don't live in Boston. I live in the suburbs. I can do
exactly.
This. Yeah, so I work in a car-related place, and, I have 7 registered, insured, running, driving cars, and while I don't drive them all every day because they're on antique insurance policies, the Eclipse is on the standard insurance policy, so that's my daily use car. But usually on a Friday, I'll choose one of the 6 other cars that are on a special policy, because you are allowed to use it like for occasional use. And I figure if I'm doing it every Friday with, a different car each week, it's not a big deal. And people at work are like, okay, I haven't seen this one. How many more are there? Don't worry about it. Just eventually they'll all go away. So the good news is there's been some other ones that have been like, well, not the good news. The funny thing is there's been a couple other cars that have like been in the mix. Like I was working on that Subaru I think I ranted about selling last week.
Yeah.
So that went to work a couple times because I've registered and insured it and made sure it was running and driving properly. So at least with stuff like that, or sometimes I'll just be frustrated in the morning because I have a leaky tire in the Eclipse that I haven't gotten to yet. And I'll just take Naomi's car if she's working from home that day. So there are sometimes, at least I'll show up in like even other cars that aren't even any of the interesting old cars. And people are just like, I thought you were into old weird cars. What is with this like Subaru and Hyundai? Like what's going on? So yeah, it's funny. I guess this is probably coming off like an annoying humble brag, which is not the point. I think it's part of my personality that I'm not bragging. I own.
Oh yeah, real humble brag. You get to drive a '07 Impreza.
Well, the 8 choices or 9 cars I can choose from. But, as I had a conversation with somebody not too long ago who was like talking about how wealthy I must be. And I was like, no, the entire dollar figure of cars is less than like one new Camry. So I'm not going to pretend. I'm definitely not rich. I'm just dumb. That's kind of what I told them. Like, you must be wealthy. I'm like, no, I'm not wealthy. I'm just dumb. So.
No, I don't have
Anyway.
7 Ferraris.
Yeah, no, I have a lot of Dodge Colts and 70s and 80s Toyotas. Like, I added everything up, and I think currently there's 14 cars. And I think that with buying and selling and everything, that my total investment was still like over the span of 20 years, like 22 grand in those cars total. So it's really not that excessive. A lot of people spend that kind of money on a hobby or that kind of time, So, and the beauty of it is like, hey, they're cars. If I wasn't me, I could sell them and make money and have money back and actually be in the green by a lot, because now that I've sat on them for so long and made them actually run and drive, they're worth significantly more than my investment now, right? Like probably 22 grand. But sarcasm a little bit there. Anyway, getting into this week's episode, Andrew, now that we've talked about our anniversary, which is how it started, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we think back to 2016. So this is our unofficial anniversary episode. I still lived in Massachusetts. I still owned my house. I had 12 broken cars. I still had my pickup truck.
Yep.
I hadn't even bought the Volkswagen yet, which is gone. I hadn't moved out here. I hadn't even met Naomi. There were still other things going on in my life back then. Yeah, everything was bad. So I used this podcast, honestly, as kind of a bit of escapism at that time in my life. And now it's not escapism anymore. And now it's even more enjoyable to be doing this. So I should publicly thank you for having the idea to start this podcast, because I think it helped me get through a lot back then. So 6 years later, here we are.
Yeah, well, I was listening where I was working. I was listening to a lot of podcasts during the day.
Sure.
One of them was Drive While Awesome, Gamden Tubbed, RIP,
Yep.
and The Smoking Tire.
Clutch. What was it?
Clutch Kickers. Clutch Kick
Nope.
podcast?
Nope. Clutch. I forget now. It's been so long.
Clutch Kick.
Rest in peace to them too.
And it was like listening to Smoking Tire, and I'm like, I could do that. And then there's a couple episodes where he's like, people always ask me, how do you get to do what you do? And I'm like, just do it. And I'm like, okay, challenge accepted, Matt Farah. I'll just do it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we don't have as many listeners, but...
Well, no, but we also... We've never... Sort of a point of pride. We've never really... I don't know if sold out's the right word. Like, we've had a couple of sponsor things over the years and people had small little deals with, but we don't pursue that. And we don't just take any guests that come our way, because we have been offered guests and a lot of them don't fit our mold, and we'd rather just not have a famous person on that doesn't fit who we are than just have a famous person on. You know, I don't want to
Right, man.
drop names, but there were a few, and a couple of them made us laugh because they are in the world of cars. They're just not in our world of cars, you know, and it just doesn't make any sense for us to do that. And if we don't grow beyond what we are by not doing that, then so be it. We're doing it for anybody who wants to listen. And I mean, now that I moved 3,000 miles away from you, who I've known most of my entire life, it's a good excuse for us to chat every week. So it's kind of for us. And if it ever grows bigger than it is, then so be it. But we're not chasing turning this into a career, you know?
We could just have a phone call, but instead we do a podcast.
Yeah, it's weird. We're two adult males. They don't talk on the phone anymore. What is this, 1985?
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually called a mutual friend of ours not that long ago because we were having, a change of plans and it was too hard to explain it. And I called him and he answered the phone. He goes, "Well, this is a weird form of communication."
Yeah.
So it was awkward. I was like, "Oh, yeah, it is, I guess, but I need to talk fast." So anyway.
Well, it was the other day I called Stephanie up. And she's like, "Why are you calling?" I'm like, "This is very important." She's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "There's a touch a truck down the street that we didn't know about.
Yeah.
I need to get Marco there right now."
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that the only people I even talk to on the phone on a regular basis I talk to Naomi almost every day on the phone. And I talk to my parents and I talk to my kid, and that's about it. So everybody else is usually a text message or a Google chat. Or I will say that I'm going to age ourselves here, but what generation came after millennials?
Z's. Gen Z.
Z's. They do communicate with chat and talking live, but they do it over video chat.
Yeah, a lot of people do video calls now. It's kind of
That's
weird.
even more awkward.
When you're in public, it's real weird.
Yeah. So
I don't even like doing it at my desk. We have phone booths, quote unquote.
Okay. To do video chats or do regular chats?
Video chats.
Yeah, even regular chats at my desk.
Because we have remote offices,
go outside.
so
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to go outside.
But anyway.
Yeah.
On
topic.
Speaking of one of the first things we did as a podcast that really got us some listeners was we went to the second Radwood SoCal.
Yes, we did.
Second show.
It was the first Radwood SoCal, second Radwood
show.
ever.
Radwood 2.
Yeah.
And you went to the most recent one.
Yeah, which would be the fifth Radwood SoCal in the third location. So that first year we went, it was at the Phoenix Club. The second and third years, it was at the Peterson in the parking garage. And the past 2 years, it's been in the parking lot of Acura Honda North American headquarters in Torrance, California. So now that I live on this coast, in the first two Radwood SoCals I did not. Actually, maybe the first three. 17, 18, 19. No, 19 I would have just moved here. So, but anyway, yeah, so I went to that show. Went in a caravan with Ron, known as Ron LP on the Instagram. It was the 11th show that his starring on has been to, which is impressive for two reasons. It's impressive because he's driven to 11 different Radwood events, but it's more impressive because it's a Starion, and the whole internet says that old Mitsubishis don't last at all, right?
Right.
So, thankfully,
is that a record for shows in general?
Other than people who are officially in charge of Radwood, I'm sure that nobody else has been 11 times. It's got to be, right? I mean, I would probably have to talk to, Art or Warren. Maybe they would know.
Fact check it, but it's
got
to be up
there. I would guess he's been to more than anybody. I think I've been to 8, which is crazy too.
Mm-hmm.
But he did have to build a new motor for it at one point, but that's because when he bought the car, it was already tired. But yeah, the car runs great. So we caravanned out with him, and also known on Instagram as Angry Bird GTI, my friend Chris. He rode in my car with me out there. So we're going to have to rewind the story a little bit. We'll make this a Project Car Update / show report, I guess.
Yep.
So back when I first bought the 944 in May, one of the intended trips to take with it was to bring it back to Radwood, because it is the original, originally it was the Radwood 944, or hashtag Rad44 was their Instagram tag for it. It was the one that was all liveried up. I've talked about it ad nauseum as far as detailing the car. So leading up to the event, I had a bunch of stuff to do to the car to make it, road trip worthy for LA, and also make it car show worthy for LA. So, I did talk a bunch about detailing it in the past, but one thing I never did was, after doing all that polishing, I never waxed it. So it's been since May. It's now November, so it's a solid 5 months. Well, that math doesn't work out. That's 6 months. It's a solid 6 months since I first, buffed the car down. So it started to fade out a little bit, because it's here in Arizona in the sun. It is not in the direct sun every day, but unfortunately, just even using it without having wax on it is going to make it die back a little bit, especially where it's a non-clear coated car. Well, at least a good portion of it is. So, excuse me. Apologies, I had to take a sip of water there. First thing I did was oil change. I did the Andrew Pascarella approved liquid moly oil change. Got the kit from FCP Euro, which had all the oil, the filter, and a new drain plug. The other issue I had was I was driving the car like 2 weeks ago, and the belt started squealing. I hypothesized that it just needed a new belt, because the belt had been loose when I first replaced, Jordan and I first fixed the air conditioning. So it wound up that it was squealing a bit, and I figured that, as we discussed in the past, it was probably glazed over, and it was just gotta be time for a new one. So I got a new Continental belt for it. I put the car up in the air, do the oil change, and put the belt on it. And I noticed that the tensioning rod for the drive belt, which tensions against the air conditioning compressor and the bottom of the engine front cover, like where the oil pump area is, was only bolted on one side. So that's why it was squealing. It wasn't because the belt was glazed. It was because it had completely lost tension. Not sure how that happened. I don't think we actually ever had that bolt out. I think we tightened it on the car.
Yeah,
so
just vibrated loose.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I had to figure out what size bolt that was, and I don't have any kind of bolt sizing tool here that could work for figuring out the bolt. So I went to O'Reilly Auto Parts because it was pretty late in the evening.
Was it the 24-hour one?
No, they open till 11 or 10. 10 o'clock, I think this one is.
Still so wild.
Yeah, it's the one right by the house. So I went to O'Reilly's. Yeah, it was like 9 o'clock. And I was looking for some kind of like a bolt sizing, like a bolt sizer. They have like the different bolts on like a metal chain, and you just can size it up that way.
Steal it and bring it home?
No, but I figured somebody would sell that thing. So they don't sell them, obviously. They do sell one, but it's a solid piece of plastic. It looks like, do you remember in like school you had like the graph, geometry, like, I forget what the name of it was. But it had the circles and the triangles and everything all built into one thing. It was kind of like that. So you could use it for sizing bolts, but you couldn't put it in the engine. So it would be this big thing.
You could use your calipers. It'll get you a size. It just won't get you the pitch.
It wouldn't get you the pitch,
thread.
Yeah.
So you at least know, like, I gotta find a 12 mil bolt. So it's either the 12125 or 1215.
So thankfully, Naomi went with me, because she is the more intelligent one of the two of us sometimes. Most times. All the time? All the time. And she was like, well, they have this metric bolt kit here, and it's like $12. Why don't we just buy that? And then you'll have spare bolts for whatever. I was like, oh, that's a valid point. So I bought the metric bolt set. Turns out it's a 10 by 1.25. But it has all the different sizes, and now it's just in the toolbox. And if I ever need a bolt, it's right there. I don't even need a sizing thing because I have spare bolts, right?
Yeah. I
can at least use those bolts now to size up if they're not long enough. I'll at least know. I can find out what the threads are. So anyway, so for $12, I bought that bolt, managed to go home, Put it back on, and everything was adjusted properly. It didn't need to be readjusted because it was adjusted how it was adjusted when we tightened the belt last time. So everything works. Car didn't squeal at all. Turned the AC on, no squeal, so the belt is fine. So threw the spare belt in the glove box to have for emergency situations if it did need it on the road. Changed the oil. That was fine. There is an oil leak on the front of the engine somewhere. I think it's where the oil filter housing is bolted to the block. Next time I do an oil change, I'm going to change that gasket out because that's easily where it's leaking from. It's not a ton of oil leaking out of it. I can tell you I drove the car all the way to California and back, and there's no perceivable difference on the dipstick. So I don't think it's anything to worry about. It does, after a long drive, drip enough that it winds up getting underneath on the bottom of the header. So it does smell a little bit like burning oil, so I do have to take care of it. But that's only after the car has been driving for, 2 or 3 hours straight. So it doesn't seem to be a big deal. Just something I have to put in my brain to fix next time I do an oil change in the car, which won't be too terribly long because I've already done about 1,000 miles in a week since putting the oil in the car. So that was all taken care of. I do have a caliper in the front of the car that is sticking. And unfortunately, somehow, some way, there are no calipers available for the car. So I need a rebuild kit. So I ordered the caliper rebuild kit, which is seals. I ordered new caliper pistons because I don't know what condition they're in. I could probably clean them up and reuse them, but I figure if I'm taking all apart, I'll put new pistons in. And I ordered new pads and new rotors. It took 3 different companies to get all the parts. I had to use Rock Auto, FCP Euro, and AZ Auto House in order to get enough parts to rebuild just the front brakes. That is surprising to me because 944s are not uncommon cars. It turns out the brakes aren't shared with a lot of other cars. Either the front suspension is, a parts bin from Volkswagen Rabbit stuff, but the brakes are actually Audi brakes. And they're 80s Audi brakes, which are obviously not common either. So I just figured being a 944, it would be easy to get parts for it. If I wanted to spend a ton of money, I could have bought a big brake kit and had it here the next day. But I was just looking to make a stock brake system work efficiently. So unfortunately, the pistons never came in and the pad sensors never came in. So I didn't get to do the brakes before I left. That being said, it's not super detrimental to the car, and it's not every time, but sometimes when you come to a stop, let's say a stoplight or a stop sign or whatever, and you come off the brake, you can feel that the pad is, or the caliper is sticking on, I think, the left front based on the dust amount. And then it does free up slowly. It's just not fast enough, unfortunately. So if it was a little bit faster, it wouldn't be a big deal because it wouldn't be sticking. So it's starting to get to that point where I figure I'm trying to be proactive here and fix the brakes before it's actually an issue. So I'm still waiting now a week and a half later for those pistons. So hopefully I can get that taken care of soon. I probably won't drive the car a ton more until I get those pistons in anyway. So, but not a big deal because it is now back in the driveway, which, spoiler alert, means I made it to and from Radwood successfully, right?
I guess so. It sounded like you weren't good for a while.
Not exactly, yeah. So we left here about 3 o'clock on Friday. Tried to beat the traffic in Phoenix and arrive in LA after. So we wanted to leave here before rush hour and arrive in LA after rush hour. So I'd say it's about a 5.5 hour drive from here to LA, depending on where you're going. So we figured we leave here at 3, we could beat the big rush, and we'd be there around 8, so it would be after the heaviest traffic time. Obviously, it doesn't matter what time you get to LA, whether it's 3 a.m. or 3 p.m., there is going to be traffic. It's just the way LA is, so you try to time it to when there's the least amount of traffic, which 8 o'clock is usually about that. So the trip went great. Stopped and got fuel at the normal places. That's another story I need to bring up when this is over. Fuel cost in Phoenix is disgusting compared to the rest of the country. Anyway, table that for afterwards. We get to LA area. We're probably, I'd say, 30 miles away from my destination, and the car stalls.
Oh no.
Yeah. I push the clutch in and I catch it just in time and like put the foot down and I push through it, but all check engine lights and all the red warning lights and everything came on the dash. So I managed to just like push the clutch in, release the clutch with the car still in gear, and it like restarted the car.
Yeah.
And then for the remainder of the trip down the highway, it was just bucking like crazy anytime I went past, I don't know, quarter throttle.
Oh, that's fun. That's always fun.
Super fun. So it's about 7:40 p.m. in LA on like the 405. So it's and the 5.
Yeah.
So there's definitely traffic, and there's no
yeah.
breakdown lanes in a couple of these places here. And there's 4 or 5 lanes. And obviously we were in the leftmost lane when it all started happening. So we get, Chris calls Ron and he's like, hey, we're having problems. Like, let's try to get over just in case we do have to like ditch on the side somehow. So the whole way down the highway, it's bucking and bucking and bucking. Then it'll run beautiful for like 3 minutes, and then it starts bucking and bucking and bucking again. And I'm like, immediately I'm having flashbacks to the eclipse. I'm like, I'm just going to leave this car here, and we're never going to see it again. And I'm selling it at Radwood. Somebody will buy it, and we're flying home. Turns out I wouldn't have had to flown home because there were like 20 people from Phoenix there. We definitely could have got a ride home from somebody. I mean, we could have got a ride home from Ron if we wanted to pile 3 grown men into a Starion, but that would have been a long drive home. So I would have had to take the back too because it would have been my fault. But anyway.
It also wasn't the only 944 there, so.
Oh my God. I can't even tell you. I would say
Ron had the only Starion. You had one of probably 20 944s.
20 is an understatement. It was the most populous car there was a 944, which is weird for me because normally I'm in something weird. So anyway, when we talk about the show, I'll talk about that part. So we finally get to our exit, which is just an exit to another highway. So I'm like, cool. Accelerating back onto the next highway to get back up to highway speed was sketch because it took a while to kind of get through the throttle and get there. It wasn't at the point now that it was just at quarter throttle. It was sometimes at, steady throttle, sometimes at quarter throttle. Sometimes I could accelerate, foot down. Sometimes I had to let it go. It was just a disaster. We finally get off the, interstate roads, and we're like, all right, screw it. We're not going to worry about this right now. We're just going to go to the hotel, get checked in, and go out and get dinner because maybe it'll cool off and it'll be fine. Maybe just the car's been running for 5.5 hours. Maybe there's something weird. So I put a post up. Hey, this is what's happening. If anybody at, Radwood tomorrow or in the area has any ideas, 944 experts, please let me know. So there were a few ideas that were thrown out there. Fuel filter was thrown out there. A fuel pump was thrown out there. I guess there's a speed sensor and cam reference sensor on the back of the head that sometimes go bad. And that was thrown out there as a possible issue. Who knows? Vacuum was another thing that was called out there. Maybe some kind of vacuum issue. So I don't know. Anyway, we go out, get dinner, hang out, have a great evening. I'm trying not to think about it. This is another thing where we can talk about 6 years ago Brad versus now. Because 6 years ago, Brad wouldn't have been able to go out and have a good time. He would have been panicking about his car the whole time and been an emotional disaster. Thankfully, that has changed. So we went out, had a good time. Next morning, woke up to go to the show. Between Chris and Ron and I, we decided the best bet would be, because the car had about a half a tank of gas, and we had driven since Ehrenberg to LA, maybe... And I even hesitate to say this based on your situation, but maybe it was a bad gas situation.
Don't you dare.
Maybe there was some water content in the gas or something went wrong. I had put regular in the car and Ron had put premium in his car. So we had different fuel and I had issues and he didn't. Again, it's a shot in the dark. Who knows what it is, but we might as well put fuel in the car, right?
Sure.
So I leave. The only thing I was thinking was I'll have to drop the tank for some reason, and that's full. But anyway, we leave the hotel. We're heading down the road. Car is sputtering and sputtering and sputtering still.
No, because I think it's German and it's Volkswagen parts. I think the pump's external and the filter.
I know for a fact the filter is. I haven't checked into the pump yet because we'll get to that in a minute. So we're driving to the gas station to get fuel. It's running like garbage. Can't tell why, but it's running like garbage. Gas station's closed. Now I'm annoyed. We went and got coffee instead. Drove to Radwood. Said I'll deal with it after the show. So I managed to do pretty good through the whole show. I didn't think about it too much. We had the car. I cleaned the car all up when I got there, and everything was fine. Some people knew I was having problems. There's a group called 944 Driver that was trying to get me to join their group to roll in together. But I don't have any interest in rolling in with a bunch of 944s. I don't mean that in any kind of derogatory way towards them, but that's just not my scene. Like, I just wanted to roll in with my friends and have a good time. Plus, they weren't going to plan on getting there until like 9:30, which I didn't want to be there at 9:30. You know, Ron's ticket was to get in at 7:30, and I wanted to be there with Ron. So, actually, I messaged the evening before because my ticket was for 8:30, and just like, hey, do you mind if I roll with Ron? And it was fine, so I did. Anyway, the 944 driver group rolls in, and that one group of 944s that came together probably had 22 cars.
Whoa.
In that one group. Yeah. So it was all of their cars, plus my 944, plus there were probably another 10 scattered out at the show field.
Weird.
There was 100% the number one vehicle that was there as far as quantity goes. So I was at least in a good place to break down, right?
Yeah.
Fast forward to after the show. We'll get to any show details afterwards. We drove the car immediately to a gas station. I filled it with fuel, premium, actually, just to get any kind of extra detergents and stuff that premium has, per Chris's idea. So I filled it with premium. Drove it around a little bit more. Really kind of drove it really hard. Like, beat the snot out of the car. Let's put it this way. The next fuel up later, when I averaged mileage, that particular tank that I was driving the car hard on, I got 16 miles per gallon. And normally I get 26 to 27 miles per gallon.
Yeah.
So I was definitely driving the car a lot harder than I normally do, just to try to replicate the situation. And we went to get gas. Then I was driving really hard. We stopped at an AutoZone or Advanced, one or the other, that showed they had a fuel filter in stock, just in case. You know, it's not. You hear all these stories where it's like, oh, it's probably the fuel filter. It's never the fuel filter, right? But just in case, I was going to get one. So we drove over there. I wanted to get a fuel filter and a couple cans of brake clean so that I could spray around like vacuum hoses and see if I could find a vacuum leak. Got the brake clean. They didn't have a fuel filter, of course. So, despite them saying they did on the internet, regardless. So after that, drove the car around some more. Again, beating the ever-loving snot out of the car. Ron was behind me. He said on one acceleration run, I did dump a bunch of black soot. But after that, nothing. Car never stumbled again. I missed one whole section. I apologize.
Okay.
When I was at the gas station filling it with gas, I popped the hood.
Yeah.
And I unplugged every vacuum line that I could find, checked it, and plugged it back in nice and tight. And I went over all of the connectors that had anything to do with fueling or ignition timing. And I just pushed on all of them to make sure they were all tight. You know, just trying the simple stuff first, right? So I did that, and I filled the car with gas. Those are the only two things we did that actually were, quote unquote, repairing the car. And after doing those two things, the car never ran poor again. So either something was loose, or it truly was bad gas, and putting the better gas in was enough to power through whatever was left of the bad gas.
Throw a can of seafoam in it.
I'm going to put some more cleaner in it now, but I didn't have any of that stuff at that point. So I did all that. Again, that tank where I filled up in Ehrenberg on the way out there, I had filled up on the 10 in Phoenix before we left. So I probably only had maybe 5 gallons of fuel from there. And maybe the fuel there was bad or wasn't right for the car or something. You know, the car only calls for 87 and it runs fine. 87 doesn't ping, doesn't do anything weird. It runs perfect. So there's no reason to put more premium gas in it usually, right? So yeah, I don't know what happened, but I drove the car all the way home. We left that morning. It's like, well, we hasn't made the problem again. It's where it seems to be running okay. In fact, maybe it was psychosomatic, but I feel like the car is running better now than it's ever run in the past. So, the next fuel up, like I said, I got like 26.7 miles per gallon. The radio is working better, which is strange. Maybe it was something
gas
electrical.
powered.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking maybe there was some kind of a grounding issue I had, because the radio used to cut in and out, and now it doesn't.
I don't know, man.
Yeah,
Some spooky stuff.
It's very spooky, but
The ghost escaped the exhaust there. That's what the black soot was the demons coming out.
Right? Or just spent enough time away from being parked next to the Eclipse with its former ignition issues. So anyway, I don't know what happened, but the car ran great the whole way home. I was like, well, that was weird.
On it, right? Because it's a Euro car?
There's a converter-looking piece, and I don't know if it's a converter or a resonator. Yeah. I haven't looked too closely at it. I got to look a little closer at it, but I'm guessing there's no converter on it based on the smell. If that is just a resonator, I'm probably going to take it out and put a converter on it because I'd like it to not smell bad.
Yeah, it
would be nice to smell like a normal car. I don't like catless cars. It doesn't make any sense to me to have a catless car because, we've probably talked about this on air before. Like, modern aftermarket cats are zero efficiency drop in the car, so it just makes the car not stink. So I'll probably put a cat on it at some point if it doesn't have one, but it does kind of smell bad sometimes. But anyway, yeah, the car came home. Everything was fine. The next morning was Monday. I had to go to work, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take the car again, and we'll see what happens in like normal stop and go traffic on the way to work. And same thing. Car ran amazing. Radio still works perfect. I don't have any... Again, I'm sure the car not running right and the radio are unrelated. It's just a weird coincidence, right? Like, I don't know. I don't have an answer. Very strange.
I don't either. It's weird.
Yeah.
Spooky.
Anyway, we'll do a quick show report. Radwood. It was like my probably 8th one I've been to. The 5th one in LA. It was, you might think it's getting old. It's not really getting old. It's just a fun car show. Fun people, fun cars. I'd say they were probably... I know they sold out of car show tickets. I don't know how many cars that is, but probably a lot. It was more efficient as far as getting into the parking lot this year. They fixed some issues they had last year. So there's no, backed up line to get in. The only line I waited in all day was for lunch. So not a big deal. Again, 944 said was probably the most common car there. The most popular car there, as far as the one people were into the most, was that Mike Burrows Stanceworks K-powered Ferrari, the Honda swapped Ferrari.
Yeah, which was at SEMA.
Yeah. So he drove it onto the show field at Radwood, and it sounded pretty rowdy. I guess his inspiration for the build is like a Group B style rally car, which he nailed with the flares and the sound. It's pretty cool. It's definitely one of my favorite recent builds. I'm not usually a fender flare guy, as you guys all listening know based on my Corolla conversation for the past month or so. But the flares in this car just work because they're very motorsports and they look just like a Group B rally car would have had probably. So the car's super rad. I'd say my personal favorite car of the show was there was a Volvo 242 that was white and had what looked like 3-piece Renault racing wheels.
Mm-hmm.
I think you saw a picture of it. I think I saw you share a picture of it.
Yeah, that's Alex Pucha's car.
I don't know. Yoshi Fab is his... He goes by.
Nope.
Yep.
Nope.
Okay.
It's not him.
There's an Instagram tag on the window that says Yoshi Fab.
Yeah, but that's not him.
Okay.
It's
anyway.
I'll send you his Instagram after.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to...
He's friends with Alex Grabau.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Based on the style of the build. Do you know what the car's powered by?
It's 5-cylinder, isn't it? Or a straight 6?
Incorrect. Yes, it's a straight 6 out of an XC60, I guess. The Volvo SUV.
Very difficult to fit. It's not exactly a bolt-in.
Yeah, so it's a straight 6.
Crazy fabrication.
Yeah, it's a straight six Volvo engine with a big turbo hanging off of it.
Yep.
It turns out the wheels are not Renault wheels. They were made by the owner of the car. So he
Yeah.
bought the barrels and he like CNC machined the centers to look like old Renault racing wheels, but in his exact specs.
Yeah.
The
guy
we're
has
looking at
insane fabrication skills.
yeah.
Him and his brother are building. There's an Instagram page called 242 Fake Race Car.
Okay.
They're building up a silhouette 242 race car
Okay.
from scratch.
That's cool. I wonder why it said Yoshi Fab on the back window. Maybe that's some
Yoshi Fab is like a guy that people are buying parts from.
interesting.
that-
It's weird that it would have that. It threw me for a loop. I assume that's what it was. But
No,
anyway,
and,
I guess it's not important.
That car was also on. There's a Donut Media video on it too. From a few
Okay.
years ago.
So I probably won't watch that, but that's okay. Donut Media was actually had a booth there. And they also had one of my favorite cars there. It was a Subaru XT with a 2.5 was at EJ25 at the STI swap. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, that Volvo was amazing. I have some pictures of it that I took. I'll post them either to my page, the Auto Off Topic page, or both, or wherever. So you'll be able to see those. We'll find out who actually the builder is, or you can send me the actual link so I tag the right person in the car. So interesting enough, it had mass plates on it. But
Yeah, he's from
according
here
to-
originally.
Yeah, according to the people around, the car is not from here. Just the builder is from here. So yeah, it's a super cool car. 242s are sweet. As we all know, we both like those a lot. Probably my favorite car there. It's hard to say that because there were a lot of cool cars there, but that was definitely up there.
Yeah, I saw
So-
it December 2019.
Okay. Interesting. I didn't recognize it, but maybe it's because I was parked near it and just saw it a lot. And it sat perfectly. So, but anyway, yeah, it was a good time, good show. The official Honda, sponsorship makes it pretty good. They had some sweet T-shirts with generations of Integras on them. They had a sweet poster, which I got 2 of in case you want one, which is the evolution of Type R. And it starts at the first Type R, and it has a bunch of pictures of all the Type R cars over the years, from Civics to NSXs to Integras. So they were giving those away, so I grabbed a spare one for you, Andrew, if you want it. If not, I'm sure somebody out here will take it. But it was a good time. No complaints. I'll go back again next year. So I know that car shows aren't the most popular with some of our listeners, but we do enjoy them. It's more accessible for me to go to a car show. And I like these destination car shows because my favorite thing to do is drive. So it gives me a good excuse to do a road trip in one of my cars. So I'll continue to go to them, continue to enjoy them, and continue doing whatever I damn well please, right?
Sure.
So quick side note on fuel in Phoenix. I learned something this weekend.
Okay.
What is a gallon of regular gas cost in Massachusetts right now?
Gas station I can see from my kitchen window is like $3.65, and the cheap station on Route 1's like $3.39.
Okay. So I'm still paying like $4.69 for regular.
Wow.
Some of the places, like the more convenient ones on the highways, are $4.99 to $5.25. Fuel used to be cheap here. Naomi actually was in Tucson this weekend, which, for those not into geography, is 2 hours south of Phoenix in a different county. In that county, she paid like $3.25 for fuel.
Weird.
Yep. I was in California, and I actually paid 20 cents less a gallon in California than I paid to fill up here in Phoenix before I left.
Does Maricopa County have extra gas tax?
It is not a gas tax.
Huh.
What happened is during the pandemic, they shut down a bunch of refineries. And for some reason, the fuel that comes into Maricopa County comes from the same refineries that service the California stations.
Yeah.
In order to service the California stations, the fuel is actually more refined to reduce emissions, and therefore costs more. The remainder of all of the counties in Arizona are serviced by Texas.
Huh.
So they get cheaper fuel out of Texas, and we're stuck paying California gas prices now in Phoenix, which winds up being higher than California prices because it has to be trucked here from California.
Weird.
So that I learned this weekend, thanks to Chris actually, is why we're paying so much for fuel here in Phoenix, and the rest of the country is like, what are you talking about? Fuel prices aren't high anymore. But for me, they're still ridiculous. So that makes me a little upset. So I'm not sure how long it's going to last for, but for the foreseeable future, I guess Phoenix is stuck paying California gas prices, and more than California because of the transportation of fuel to Phoenix from California. So super annoying. I don't like that at all because that's hitting me directly in my wallet. Thankfully, most of my cars are fairly efficient, and it's not too big of a deal. But I would much rather be paying $3 something a gallon. You know, it's wild to me that you guys are paying almost $2 less a gallon than I am.
Well, the big jump is to premium. It's like $1 more.
So it's your premium is still less than my regular.
Yeah.
Yeah, premium here is over $6. So it's not. Thankfully, everything I have almost everything I have runs on regular. So it's just frustrating. But I can complain about that all I want later. It's not. Doesn't affect anybody outside of Arizona or California, I guess. So here we are, paying too much for fuel. So
Yep.
Anyway, that's my project car / road trip / show report, I guess.
So speaking of Hollywood and California, Auto Week is reporting that there's going to be a sequel to Bullet.
Okay.
Do you know who's
A
directing
sequel
it?
or a remake?
A sequel, not a remake, they claim,
Interesting.
from the studio.
Okay.
Continuation of the story. So
Who's directing it?
yes.
Spielberg.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Who do you think is
Okay.
the lead actor?
Let's see. Who would be the quote unquote king of cool now? Keanu.
That would be a pretty good guess. But Bradley Cooper.
Okay. Yeah, I guess.
Keanu would have been a good choice, though.
I went with Keanu because he kind of has that more rough around the edges kind of.
He's a motorcycle car guy.
Yeah, but he kind of has that rough around the edges, not as polished as Bradley Cooper, where I think that Steve McQueen kind of had that kind of vibe to him. I mean, obviously, we know now, unfortunately, through reporting and history that Steve McQueen was not a good man. But as far as his Hollywood persona was, he had that like kind of rough cowboy kind of edge, like not Western cowboy, but like, I don't know. He wasn't the polished guy that Bradley Cooper is. It's kind of why I went with Keanu, and also the car and motorcycle connection, because obviously McQueen was a huge car and motorcycle guy. So yeah, I don't think I have a problem with it being Bradley Cooper. I don't know if I'd have chosen him, but so is he going to be the same character? Is he going to be playing, Bullet?
Supposedly.
Interesting.
It's just supposed to be it's not even in production yet. It's like, pre-production talking
Sure.
about it.
The light has been lit green, and they're going to start moving into it.
Suppose they signed deals for it, according to this article.
Well, I mean, what better time to do it?
The...
You can buy a brand new Charger and a brand new Mustang.
Yeah.
They've done a bunch of like teaser things with magazines doing shoots around San Francisco with the jumps and stuff. I know Car and Driver did one a few years ago, and somebody else made a small video with the new Mustang.
I had this thought the other day, and I actually was talking about it in our Discord. Everybody's like, "Oh, Bullet's the greatest car chase ever on film," and you're like, "It's pretty good," but like all the Gymkhana stuff is way better.
Yeah, it was like car chase.
Neither was technically the movie. It's just a car. It's like
Sure,
just talking about cars on film.
Okay, So
It's the same stuff.
let's
They're doing jumps. They're sliding around.
Okay. Also, we're talking 40 years, 50 years, not 40 years ago, 50 years, 55 years ago.
Yeah.
So the technology that they used in that movie was more important than the car chase itself. It was the best car chase ever filmed to that point.
Yeah.
It was the father of all of the modern car chases. If we didn't have Bullet, we wouldn't have 90% of the car chase movies.
The
in
7-Ups
70s,
is a
80s.
better car chase than the Bullet car chase.
But it comes after the Bullet car chase.
It does.
There's a lot of car chases that are better than the Bullet car chase that came after the Bullet car chase. Bullet is not famous, I don't think, for being the best car chase. I think it's famous for being
It's like
the
start.
first. Yeah, the first. Like it opened the door to the Hollywood, car chase was that movie. So I think that's why it's more important. I mean, the movie isn't the best movie in the world. The car chase isn't the best car chase ever. I think the movie gets a bad rap from most people who are in our age group or younger because we're used to the spacing and timing of more modern movies. And I think if you watched nothing but late 60s films, you wouldn't think it was a bad movie. It would just be like a normal late 60s film. Nothing groundbreaking other than the car chase, but a pretty typical, pacing of the era. So I do enjoy the movie. I don't just watch the car chase when I watch it. I do sit down and watch the whole movie. So I guess I'm excited for a sequel. Am I glad? I'm probably glad it's not a remake because I don't think they could do a remake without making it like shot for shot, and that wouldn't be the same. So I'm into it though. I'll watch it, of course. I'll go to the theater. There's another car movie coming out soon too, or if it's not already out already, it's a Lamborghini movie. So it's a good time to be a car enthusiast moviegoer, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm into it. Is there any talk about like how long it's gotta be before it comes out, or production or anything?
No, I wouldn't even. There's no timeline, so
Okay.
who knows? Could be 5 years from now.
Don't hold my breath.
No.
Will do.
Because he could like get a call to do another Guardians of the Galaxy movie or something, and that would take priority.
Yeah, things that pay him many millions of dollars.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's his rate. That's what he's got to get. Whether he does a good job or a bad job.
Yeah. Must be nice.
Anyway.
If I do a bad job, my job that doesn't pay me anywhere near that will fire me. So
yeah.
super annoying.
Speaking of annoying things, apparently on eBay, you can no longer buy a lot of tuner parts.
Yeah.
So the EPA has been going after a lot of tuning places.
Thanks, Diesel Brothers.
Yeah. For Clean Air Act violations.
Yeah.
And this includes a lot of standalone ECUs and tunes and flashes and all the cool stuff you can do to new cars that makes them run a lot better and faster for like a couple $100.
Yeah.
So
the problem is, yeah, never mind. Let's continue on.
So according to eBay's, this is from Road and Track, defeat device policy. Any part that may bypass, delete, or render a factory emissions systems inoperative is actively banned from being listed on the site. The ban applies to parts whether or not they are hardware or software solution. The company lists a number of disallowed products, including tuners, standalone ECUs, off-road exhaust systems, AFM disablers, I don't know what those are, throttle response controllers,
air fuel.
oxygen.
It's probably like the Fowler things for oxygen sensors.
Well, it says and oxygen sensor bypass devices.
Oh, okay.
Among other things.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to make this a political.
That would prove very costly for eBay, as every illegal part sold can carry financial penalties of $4,819 as of January 13th, 2020.
Here's my concern. What is sold on eBay versus what it's getting put on? So you're not allowed to defeat emissions control devices. Can you still purchase these things for modernizing a vintage car. Because if you can't modernize your vintage car, you're actually hurting in the long run. Because if you're modernizing a vintage car, you're making it up to the efficiency of a more modern car. There needs to be some kind of legal way. Because say I'm switching the '68 Mustang to EFI.
It's probably via what it's made for. So basically things that are pre-75 are emissions exempt. So if you say the product is made for a 1968 Camaro, then it should be exempt.
It should be, but if you read the actual eBay prohibited item policy, it says one of the things their bullets is aftermarket standalone, non-OEM electronic control units, including full electronic fuel injection conversion kits.
Well, just don't buy it from eBay. Buy it from Summit.
Except, will Summit stop selling them?
No, I don't think so. I mean,
will they be banned in general because of the potential use in something they shouldn't be in?
Are you going to buy them direct from Holley? I mean, what?
Well, that's the whole problem. But maybe Holley will will have to stop making them because they can't afford to. Maybe they cost $4,000 each. They can cover the fine in case they get caught for selling it. Like, I don't know. I'm nervous by the whole thing.
Well, that's what SEMA is for.
It is,
and that's what if you're Holley, that's what your company's lawyers are for.
Yeah.
Because you're now cutting into your business.
Sure. But listen, I agree with not allowing people to defeat emissions on a street-driven car that has emissions.
Well, there's no reason to on a modern car.
No, not at all. We just talked about that with the Porsche Cat. Like, this new stuff is so efficient that it doesn't matter. But the problem is people, Diesel Brothers, go and make these things so they actively belch black smoke out, and then they film it and they put it on the internet for all to see, and they get a following, and next thing you know, the government's coming after everybody, even people who are trying to do things the correct way. Because you can modify your factory car in a way that it's still efficient, possibly more efficient than the factory parameters, and not be breaking any laws because you still, I don't know, every car should have to pass a sniffer test. And if you can't pass a sniffer test, you can't drive the car. That's just how it should be as far as cars that have emissions. It doesn't make any sense that you can't make something more efficient and run better and not do it. I think that's where my issue lies.
Well, most old cars don't even have emissions testing. So what's the point? What does it matter?
Well, we're talking old cars now. Old cars are, according to California, 75 and down.
Yeah.
What about every car that's built from 75 to 95 that you could use, more modern fuel injection on and make it work better?
Yeah, well, none of this stuff has been legal in California anyways, unless it's carb exempt.
Right.
That's been like that for years.
Which is dumb. If I have an 85
you can just
Mustang,
get a carb exemption, though.
Yeah, it's $15,000 or so to get your car tested.
Yeah, so no. If you want to sell something in California, as a company, you can get it carb tested. We had to do it at my last company. It was expensive, but once you did it, you could sell there.
Sure.
And it was totally legal. So if you think you're going to sell enough of this product in California, then you'll pony up the money to have it tested.
Well, maybe
so that's the other thing. So maybe there should be a nationwide thing where they have testing, so you can prove that your system is legal. But also, if you sent your system to California and had it carb tested, technically that means it's good for the rest of the country.
It is for sure. And that's actually, if you read eBay's policy, they say that they will allow devices to be sold that have carb numbers on them.
Yeah.
But that doesn't help us with that's the workaround for bolt-on parts. That's not the workaround for standalone or EFI conversion kits.
You just don't buy it through eBay. You shouldn't buy it through eBay anyways.
Well, I know you should buy direct from manufacturer. But what I'm saying is this is the beginning. What happens next? How hard does the government come down on this stuff? I know we have to unfortunately make the gun enthusiast comparison sometimes, because the government has come down and said, these things you already own, you can't own anymore. And I don't want to get into a states' rights, gun rights issue here on our non-political podcast, but the fact is that potential is there. And I think that's what makes me more nervous than anything else. I don't want to have, my
sort of, but I don't know why I always bring it up. It's different because there's a constitutional amendment. We don't have a constitutional amendment to own a vehicle. So
right.
That's not
Which
even,
makes it easier to make it
the government
illegal.
could just take cars away.
Yeah. Or certain use cases of cars. And I know they're not going to, because, the entire country would quite literally stop. But I don't know. It just, I get nervous about it. Maybe I shouldn't get nervous about it. Maybe I'm overthinking it. It just seems, what really sucks, and what the whole crux of the whole thing is it sucks that the actions of a few have now hurt everybody. Which I guess is honestly, going back to the gun community, it's the same thing. So I don't know. I get mad every time I see diesel rotos on television still, because I believe they should be banned from everything. Like Discovery Channel still has a TV show with them. And that to me is the most infuriating thing, because they gave them the platform in the first place and they still have their show, even though they got fined millions by the government and are doing something illegal on television. If Discovery Channel had a show where somebody's going out and murdering people, they'd take it off the air. If Discovery had a show where somebody's going out and dumping used oil in the ocean, they'd take it off the air. But for somehow it's like their fine was a slap on the wrist because these guys have millions of dollars and they're just out doing the same thing, just not filming it anymore. So I don't know. It's all their fault. Sparks Garage, the worst.
Well,
trash television has ruined it for everybody, basically.
I mean, it makes me definitely, I'm like, maybe I should get that tuned sooner than later for my Volkswagen.
Then I'll hate you more than them because you're being illegal. No, I'm kidding. Because you're doing it legally, because your tune is not defeating emissions. It's making your car run more efficiently. So, whatever. You bought a thing.
Anyway.
You should be able to use it. If it makes your car illegal, it won't pass the sniffer test. Your car then gets, in Massachusetts anyway, gets referred to the REF, or they call it in Massachusetts the enhanced emissions test, MAC. Yeah. So it gets referred to the MAC, and then you go out and have to prove to them that your car runs fine. And if it doesn't run fine, then you have to put it back to stock, and it costs you a lot of money. And you know what? It should cost you a lot of money because you did something knowingly illegal.
But they don't even do sniffer tests. They just do plug-in here.
Also dumb. They should do sniffer tests. That's the whole thing. You could, I don't know. I'm going off on the rails here, so I'm going to slow myself down before.
Well, they stopped doing it because it was a pain in the butt.
Sure, but
they just do plug-in tests. So if you've programmed out all the codes, it doesn't matter.
Well, that's the problem with these tuners, right? So now the government's being lazy by not wanting to do a sniffer test, and they just don't want you to trick anything.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do I know?
But for some reason, I remember people were having their Evos tuned. And the thing would somehow discover that the base tune had been altered.
Right.
And it would refer them to the MAC Center.
Yeah, and then it pulled the registrations, right?
I don't remember exactly. But, like, I had the Subaru. Both my Subarus had the Cobb tuner on them. Yep. And I never had any problems passing emissions with them.
Because they didn't do anything with your emissions. They didn't make the car run less efficient. They made it run more efficient.
No, because there was no sniffer test. It was just a plug-in.
Yeah.
So we don't know if it affected the emissions.
I feel like it didn't, but no, I'm just on the wrong side of history probably here. I don't know. I feel like there's got to be a way to do it and make it legal. And maybe you're right. Maybe we just got to carb everything, but I don't know how you carb something like an EFI conversion kit. Because in order to carb
but then that's what you have SEMA for, and supposedly their lobby.
Yeah. Because I think of something like,
I mean, there was what? I mean, you said there was how many booths were at SEMA? Like they represent a lot of people. Yeah. So this is a rather large industry that you would be potentially crippling. So,
It's
not
happened
great.
in the past. But anyway, yeah, I'm not thrilled. I don't know what to say about it other than that. I'm not thrilled about it. I do think that there should be punishments for those who are intentionally defeating their emissions devices. But I don't think that there should be wholesale punishment for everybody that wants to play with their car. There's got to be a way to do it the right way. I guess maybe I'm the outside use case here because I'm the guy who has the 1983 Plymouth Sapporo with a terrible carburetor on it that belches black smoke when you first start it up, which is probably my fault for not tuning it right. But anyway, I could take that off and throw it in the trash and bolt on a 2-barrel, Holley EFI. I say 2-barrel, but the 2-barrel style Holley EFI, and make the thing run super efficient and not stink every time I start it up, and use less fuel and put less particulate into the world. And based on what I'm reading, I won't be able to buy that part through eBay right now. Great, I can go through Holley still, but maybe in the future I won't be able to. And that's, I think, what's making me nervous. And maybe I'm also thinking about the future that's not ever going to come, and I shouldn't worry about it at all. But I feel like somebody has to before it quietly gets taken away. So I guess that's your SEMA comment, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Or I just take out a huge loan and I buy EFI, stacks and stacks of EFI to put in the back house for later.
You should.
No, I definitely shouldn't. It's a very terrible financial decision, Andrew. Yeah,
maybe they'll be worth a lot of money because you can't get them anymore.
What do you need a $20,000 loan for? I need to buy 17 EFI units. The bank would go, no. So, anyway. It is what it is. I'm not gonna stew on it anymore.
Yeah. Well, hat tip to Disco Steve on our Discord for giving us that story. So you should come hang out in the Discord.
Yes. Transitioning conversation. I like it. Discord. Come to Discord. Ask us for a link. We're currently discussing...
That's right. Private message us.
This situation and burn down RX-8s like the rest of the world is.
Yeah. I didn't even want to give that guy any airtime. So
I'm not saying his name or anything. I'm just saying we're talking about it in the Discord off air.
More like making fun of him.
And how ridiculous he is. Yes, I would 100% make fun of him. Yeah. As he deserves.
I even added a new Discord channel this week because some of us enjoy fancy alcohols. So
sure. And he didn't call it Blotto off topic, and I'm upset.
No, because I didn't want it to be confusing when you're looking through the list.
Oh, I don't think it would be, but that's okay. We'll let it slide.
All right. Anyway, that's an episode.
I think it is.
Come follow us on Discord. Follow us on Instagram, Off Topic. Follow our other page, Scale Autocast. Follow me, Ray Sneger. Brad, where can they find you?
They can find me at TSISS350 on Instagram. I now have a few videos that I've put out through work. So if you want to see some video content with my dumb face in it, you can either go to Auto Hunter Cinema on YouTube, or also there's other videos on the ClassicCars.com TV, which are both YouTube channels where you can see some of my SEMA content. So, and a couple of print articles actually on Journal, which is the ClassicCars.com Journal. So you can just Google that, it comes up. Then search my name and find some stuff there.
Would you say people can see my content?
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See my content?
I got it. I'm ignoring it, but I got it.
All right.
Glossing right over.
Keep goes analog and aim for the roses.